Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fourth episode of Off the Cuff. As per usual, this is a series of videos or audio where I just talk about some things I've been thinking about lately, give my thoughts on the matter without actually doing much research. The idea being that I'm just sort of expressing some thoughts out on the matter. There's obviously a few sort of facts I've learned over many years that back up some of what I say, but particular stuff that I spout out, is not necessarily researched. And honestly, I don't really plan much of what I say. I kind of write down some things I want to talk about, but I don't really go looking into them or kind of make a script or anything like that. So it's off the cuff. So I was watching a video earlier and the other day with Reese-Mogg, just kind of interviewing on various news channels, I think ITV and BBC. And I'm not really a fan of Reese-Mogg, only in the sense of I've not really watched much content with him in it. I've not really watched him talk much. So I can't really call myself a fan. Not to say I'm opposed. From what I have seen of him, he is very well composed and he's good at dealing with his arguments. Which is why I wanted to bring up this argument that I saw come up, where he was asked by a TV interviewer about his views on religion, his religious views on gay marriage and abortion, and the TV interviewer was just asking him whether or not he would personally try to bring about laws against gay marriage or abortion, and the interviewer seemed to completely misunderstand or not be able to even comprehend that he might be able to hold particular personal views without actually feeling the need to force those views on others, which I find that to be completely ridiculous. It does seem to be a trend that's begun, I don't know when, but it's become a common thing where people think that because you hold a certain view, you will force that view on others. Now, I have all sorts of strong views of my own. I will seek to persuade people. I'll find facts that support my views, and sometimes I'll look for facts that challenge mine and try and create an argument against it or refine my viewpoint. But I don't force, and nor would I ever try to force anyone to believe what I believe simply because I believe it. I won't believe what other people want me to believe because they want me to believe it. So I've got my particular views and I will live my life in accordance with those views. And I believe Reese-Mogg does the same thing, and that's what he says in this interview. I just find it's really strange that people don't think that you can separate your beliefs, your politics, and your business, your work. I guess there seems to be an idea that there's no such thing as compartmentalization. A perfect example is that I've got some very strong political views, and often the work I do in web development, sometimes clients make requests that, I don't politically agree with, or I think that there's, sometimes I feel like they're making decisions that are politically driven, but not necessarily actually logical. And ultimately, despite the fact that I hold those particular views, I always acknowledge the fact that I'm being paid to be there. It's my job. I'm being paid by this client, and I'm doing all sorts of work for them and building their product. It's not reflective of me or my personal views. So I will do whatever the client asks within reason, really. Obviously, I've got to get paid for everything, and if it's illegal, then I'm obviously not going to do that. But if it's just something I personally don't agree with or don't believe in, or I don't believe the facts support, I will still do it because my reasons for disagreeing have no impact. I'm not going to force my views on the client or their product. And I don't believe a lot of the time the product is not a political platform. So why would I express political views through that? And the same goes for my various religious and non-religious beliefs that I have, and my politics. There's some views that I have that I believe to be political, even though they're not necessarily in line with religious beliefs. They're in line with political beliefs. For me, the idea of, for example, as one example, would be gay marriage, right? So I don't really feel like gay marriage I'm not really okay with it, because the marriage is originally a religious ceremony, originally a religious structure. It comes from Christianity, at least the type that we perform in the United Kingdom and in the US is a Christian form of marriage. And the government has slowly crept into that. And so I'm of the view that even though I personally don't really support gay marriage, I also don't support the government having any say in what is and isn't legal in terms of marriage. I think the government should be completely out of that. I want the government to be out of any sort of personal decisions in people's lives. The government shouldn't really have a control on that. And I just find that this whole idea that you can't really separate your politics and your personal views and your work into separate sort of categories to be really strange. And the fact that people don't seem to be able to separate these things and can't even comprehend that other people could it's a very weird trend. And I think that anyone who thinks that, they should really take a moment to rethink, and maybe rethink how they're living their own lives. Because if they're going around and having all forms of their life and their personal views all meshed together and they're unable to separate them, then there's a high chance that they don't have control over their own views, that they can't even suppress them for a moment. And also, in line with the whole watching Reese-Mogg interview with these interviewers, and watching them to have this sort of very concerted is not necessarily the right word, composed debates with people, and previously watching some Ben Shapiro debates, watching him discuss with people, I noticed that there seems to be a large growth of sort of a hysterical, emotional arguments being made, and people don't seem to understand the idea of a reasoned debate, the idea of a logical debate. It seems to be there's a lot of arguments I've seen going on where people will believe what they believe because they believe it, not because the facts support it, or because it makes them feel good, makes them feel that they're correct. But it's almost axiomatic for them, and I found it to be very, very strange that people believe it with such heart, which is great. It's great to have heart in your beliefs, but you've got to have a moment to kind of make sure you're trying to make them stronger, and not just stronger through willpower, but stronger through fact. And there's a lot of examples I've seen of various people who hear Ben Shapiro say something as if it's what he believes and not just what the facts support. I was reading through an argument being had on Facebook between some people, and I noticed that a lot of people were saying, "Oh, well, because you've spoken to," I think the person in question here this person was speaking to Stefan Molyneux, and a lot of these people were saying, "Oh, because you spoke to Stefan Molyneux, you must agree with his views." And they didn't seem to comprehend the fact that you can talk to Stefan Molyneux, you can hear what he has to say, what his views are, and take them on board. Whether you disagree or agree with them, you can just hear what they have to say, and maybe you disagree, but you want to hear what the argument is in the first place. And it's very strange. It's very strange that people don't think that people are so emotional about their arguments. They think they have to completely shut off any counter-argument, because I think in some sense people believe it to be evil. But really, that is the same argument that fundamentalist Christians made decades ago, and it wasn't right then, it's not right now. Another interesting thing I've seen just going on over the last, since 2016 really, it's the whole Trump election. It was big then, it's big now, and a lot of people still talking about it, which is great. People are actually interested in politics. It's quite exciting to see that people are so, let's say, active in the political realm. It seemed like a lot of people were kind of getting bored of politics. I mean, you say what you want about Obama, Trump has managed to really keep the politics going, keep them alive, keep a lot of people really active and passionate about it. But I've noticed something. A lot of people are very confused because, I know I do watch the Shapiro show, and I see that people say, why Shapiro gets so annoyed because he's saying, if Trump could just stop going on his Twitter tirades for a moment, people could see many of the successes he's got. He could actually highlight many of the good things his candidacy and his election has brought about. But the problem is, I think that if Trump were to allow people to focus on what he's brought about, they might choose to oppose that simply because they do not like Trump. And I wondered to myself, what if there's actually a smart reason for why Trump constantly pulls out these big scandals, constantly causes uproars and offense all over the place? Not to give the guy too much credence, I don't know if he's doing it intentionally, but I have this view, and it's a theory really, but that Trump is almost distracting everyone, distracting the media, distracting all his opposition by giving them these low-hanging fruit, these easy targets where they can just waste all their energy on. I talk about the passionate arguments. They can put out these passionate, heartfelt arguments about how horrible that thing he said was. And all the while, Trump can enact a lot of these new policy changes and with relative ease because his opposition are too busy focusing on his low-hanging fruit that they don't actually notice the big changes he's making. And they are good changes, but I think he's able to get these good changes in place because he doesn't have people opposing him, largely anyway. Now, another little thing that I like to it's a term I've really I really like it. And it's very, let's say, prevalent in a lot of the social justice warrior ideologies and thinking. And that is this term, the soft bigotry of low expectations. And it's quite a fascinating thing because, I saw a picture just earlier today of this a white woman. She took a selfie with a pilot who was a black woman, and she's just saying how she's so happy because she's being flown in a plane, and it's probably the first time she's ever been aware that there's a black woman who's actually flying the plane, and she was so emotional and proud of this moment. And it's almost, you could say that it's almost racist to be making such a big deal, like, oh, look at you're managing to fly a plane, you lucky black woman, that you're managing to actually fly a plane, you've managed to get to this position. In my opinion, a black woman flying a plane is, it's great. There's not much reason to highlight it more than anyone else flying the plane, because to highlight it in that way, you're basically saying it's. I know that the white woman would probably say, oh, it's because she's overcome the systematic oppression or the patriarchy or something like that. But really, the evidence would point to something else, and the evidence would probably point to the fact that this black woman was a capable pilot, just as much as she could be. So there's nothing particularly special, and to highlight it is almost condescending. Why not just say to yourself, oh, that's great, let your views be your views and just be like, oh, okay, that's great. It's a black pilot, black female pilot, it's great. But to kind of highlight it and post it all over social media is such a strong virtue signal, such a strong way of showing how proud you are of the black people to get to this position of being a pilot. And, they're not, no person should be it's just so condescending. Because then on another flip side, you're saying, okay, so this black woman maybe got there because we should only be proud of the fact that she's a black woman who's there. Not the fact that she's just there, that she's got a great job, but that she's representing her race, her people. Why not just be proud of her individual achievements, not the group by which she has achieved it from? It's a bit ridiculous, really. And I've seen the self-bigotry of low expectations all over the place. And I find it really weird because, again, I work in web development and I always see I have this weird sort of view where I don't care. I don't go, oh, if there's some female web developer I'm working on, I'll go, oh, wow, that's really good code for a woman. Well done. That's brilliant. Sure, it's a compliment, but that's so insulting. That is so insulting. And to say, oh, you're a black female pilot, it's great. Well done. You got there. You did it. It's so condescending because I would hope that the female pilot didn't become a pilot to represent her race. And it's kind of assigning to her decisions motives that probably weren't there. And I find it kind of abhorrent because it, you remember that there's a quote from Martin Luther King, and I don't want to paraphrase it, so I'm going to have to Google it really. But basically, yeah, I think Martin Luther King said, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And this white woman who took the selfie judged the pilot by the color of her skin and her gender. Not by the content, not by the fact that she was a pilot. Just, she didn't just say, oh, she could have kept it in her head if she wanted to have that whole approach, but she's going to post it all over social media. Because that's the world we live in now, where you will judge someone's position, you'll look at who the person is, and you'll say, well done, you managed to get there because you're black, because you're Asian, because you're a woman, because you're Muslim, because you're Hispanic or Hindi. And it's just like, no, they just got there because they did well in their job, because they were the top of their class, because they were at the grade. They were they met the grade that they needed to be able to be brilliant at the job, not because of their group that they were part of. Now, moving on to one little topic. Now, we did talk in the last episode about Sargon's banning from Patreon. And it's sort of brought out this discussion now of, I think someone called it alternative internet. But I do see this growth, and I've been looking into this kind of thing myself, which is you've got this whole growth of new platforms in support of free speech, and it's great to see that. I wish it was some of my ideas that I've got, but I'll get to that later. I'll develop those and spread those out. But Jordan Peterson and Dave Rubin did a recent talk. They were talking about some of the not alternative internet, but what they're going to do about this whole Patreon banning. I think Jordan Peterson hypothesized creating a new platform which will not bend to the will of the mob, which is great. Recently we saw Gab.ai. I believe the guy who runs that, he has some of his personal views got involved. I haven't looked too much into it, but some of his personal views on the Lolicon or Lolly sort of artwork. He didn't really like it. I think he's felt it was part of pedophilia, so his personal views on that, he censored that stuff. And considering that Gab.ai considers itself a platform of no censorship and in support of free speech, it was very hypocritical. That's just my understanding of it anyway. But you're seeing many other platforms, as Minds.com is another one. The whole Bitcoin idea of decentralized currency is great as well. I've got a few of my own ideas around various platforms to help avoid bans from various currencies like PayPal and direct transfers, allow people to sort of proxy around stuff, so instead of receiving a payment directly, they can spread across their payments, so that it's a lot easier to create a new account or new way to be paid. Similar thing for Twitter. People get banned quite quickly, and then they lose all their followers, and it's gone. It's over. And I've got a few ideas around that, and a couple more ideas on some news platforms helping to spread out news so that people will remain informed and always be kept up to date on what's going on. If you're interested in something happening with the Honduran caravan, and we hear something a year from now new on that, then you will receive an update, that kind of thing. I still have to build all these platforms, but I'm hoping to build a team and to get more people involved and actually build some of these products. But if the internet becomes split and you end up with these sort of mainstream commercial platforms and some of these alternative media platforms, I mean, we know how the cycle works. A lot of these small platforms began as alternatives to mainstream platforms, and now alternative internet like Gab and Minds and Bitcoin are being created as alternatives to the existing big companies that have started on the internet. And all that will happen is that maybe those will grow in popularity, and eventually those will become the main platforms, and then problems will grow, and the cycle will continue, and new alternatives will come out. So long as they continue to improve and are in defense of liberty of each individual, then I'll be all for it. But we know that it will continue to change. So it's what happens throughout the centuries, is that you end up with a complete cycle. That's the thing about a free society, is that your battle never ends. You're always going to have to fight for free speech, because that's just what will happen. There will always be people who don't like something and want to control it. And it's the interesting thing, is that's the funny thing about a lot of religion and a lot of liberalistic values, is that they are almost counter to human nature to a degree. And obviously I don't know all the science on this, but I've just noticed that there's a lot of things that we feel natural about, and often the logic, the like sort of unconscious logic behind, like, for example, when we're debating, there's two sides to debate. You have to learn to fight against making an emotional argument. You have to fight against getting angry. You have to try and rely on facts. You have to learn to employ all these tricks to kind of keep calm and keep measured. And that interesting way of discourse goes against a lot of what we feel, our emotions, and how we react to things. And I just find that interesting. I think anyway, that's everything from me today. I didn't have too much to talk about this week. But if you know any facts or have any disagreements with some of the stuff I've said, please comment or message me. Just get in touch and let me know what you think. There's a lot that I'm saying, obviously, that's not necessarily grounded in reality. Who knows? But I'm just saying what I observe in the world, and if someone can provide me with some facts to back it up or to oppose it, then hopefully that'll go well. But I hope you've enjoyed some of these ideas. I hope that maybe you get some ideas off of some of the stuff I've talked about. If you're a web developer or software developer and you want to get in touch about building some of these platforms that I've got in mind, or if you've got some ideas of your own, I'd love to work with you. Anyway, that's all from me for now. Till next week.